The destiny of India's quest for the Olympic gold in archery lies in a quantum shift of the training minds of the elite archers. So here we are at Destiny, a heavenly, beautiful resort with hills and rivers and beautiful valleys in the Ooty Hills, South India, presenting to you an effort in training the minds of our archers and archery coaches. Hi, this is SHIHAN HUSSAINI, Director, Coaches Committee, Archery Association of India. Om, Om, Om. Olympic medal, nothing but the Olympic mission. Welcome again to discover the mind coach in you. Namaste, namaskar. Welcome to Aap Hain Next Dronacharya. Man ka Dronacharya, the Dronacharya of the mind. Chalo, tirandaz mein Olympic gold layenge. Chalo, let's go and get a gold in the able category division at the next Olympics. You are watching the fourth lecture on the mental training series in archery, the most expansive and detailed, in-depth series of lectures in mental training ever given in archery. I may humbly challenge. In the first lecture, we discussed why mind coaching is pivotal to an Olympic medal. In the second lecture, I argued why robotic shooting is important. In the third lecture, I spoke about motivation and goals. Well, in the fourth lecture, in the 12-lecture series, we will discuss in detail about attention, concentration, and thought management. Concentration, or the ability to focus on the task at hand while ignoring distractions, is a vital determinant of successful performance in archery. One way to illustrate this is to consider the importance attached to this mental skill by leading Korean Olympic archer Kibo Bae. This is what Kibo Bae, Korean Olympic archery medalist, told me when I met her at the Rio Olympics and gifted her a portrait I made of her and asked her how she felt at the shooting line. She said, "I have learned to cut out all the unnecessary thoughts on the shooting line. I simply concentrate. I concentrate on the tangible, on the bullseye, on the timing of the hold, on the sighter pin, on the release flow. The crowd fades away and the other archer disappears. And now it's just me and the target 70 meters away." Everything is about concentration. Everything. Additional evidence for the importance of focusing in sport comes from situations in which it fails or is disrupted in some way. For example, consider how Atanu Das, India's greatest hope, performed in the Tokyo Olympics ranking rounds. It was truly heartbreaking to know that a much hyped archer like Atanu Das, who was such a great hope for India, could land an arrow on the outer blue circle, scoring a 5. And that too in the most crucial moment in archery history. In the first set of 36 arrows, he hit the red 7 times, scoring a poor 8. In the second set of 36 arrows, he hit the red 8 times, scoring 8. And yes, in the horrible fifth end, the fatal sinking of a billion hearts, a 5. Well, this example shows clearly that an elite level of sport, effective concentration can mean the difference between winning and losing an Olympic gold medal. Unfortunately, there are many unresolved issues in research on attentional processes in archers. For example, what exactly happens in our minds when we concentrate on something? Why do archers lose their concentration so easily? What kinds of distractions are encountered in competitive archery? What psychological principles govern an optimal focus in archery? And perhaps most importantly of all, what practical techniques can our archers use in order to improve their focusing skills and thinking habits in successful competitive situations. The purpose of this important lecture is to answer these and other important questions about attention, concentration, and thought management. Before doing this, however, the distinction between attention and concentration needs to be clarified. Attention and concentration. Now let's look in detail about it. Contemporary cognitive psychologists regard the mind as a limited capacity information processing system. One reason for this limitation is that people's working memory or current awareness is very brief and fragile. To explain, psychologists distinguish between long-term memory, an unconscious system designed to store vast amounts of information for indefinite periods of time, and working memory, a conscious system that people use whenever they store and manipulate currently relevant information, such as the name of someone you may have been introduced to at a party, or a telephone number given to you verbally for a short period of time. Unless information that enters working memory is deliberately rehearsed, it will be lost forever within 15 to 30 seconds. Given this limitation, a crucial challenge that the mind faces is how to cope with the abundance of information available to it, not only from the external world, but from the internal world of people's memories and imaginations. This task is made easier by a cognitive process called attention, a mental process that prevents information overload by facilitating the selection of some stimulation for further processing while inhibiting that of other stimulation. Research on attention is one of the most important fields in cognitive psychology and cognitive neuroscience because it addresses the issue of how many voluntary control and subjective experiences arise from and interact with day-to-day, everyday behavior. But what exactly the term attention means? What does it mean? In psychology, attention is a paradoxical concept because it is familiar yet mysterious. How can this be? Well, on the one hand, it is a familiar term because it is ubiquitous in people's everyday language. To illustrate, an archery coach may ask his archers to pay attention to something important that he is about to say before the shooting match starts. Based on an intuitive understanding of this process of focusing in daily life, psychologist William James observed famously that everyone knows what attention is. Everyone. It is the taking possession by the mind in clear and vivid form of one of what may seem several simultaneously possible objects or trains of thought. Focalization, concentration of consciousness are of its essence. It implies withdrawal from some things in order to deal effectively with others. On the other hand, attention is also a rather mysterious concept because it is multidimensional with at least 3 different component processes. To begin with, at an experiential level, the attentional process of concentration refers to people's deliberate investment of conscious mental effort in processing information that is important to them at a given moment. For example, an archer displays concentration when she makes a big effort to listen carefully to every word of a coach's instructions before an important archery competition. The second dimension of attention involves selective perception or the ability to zoom in on task-relevant information while ignoring potential distractions. For example, archers have to learn to focus only on the target as they shoot and wait for the other archer to shoot while ignoring the distracting movements of the other archers and where that archer's arrow has landed. The third attentional process is divided attention and refers to the fact that with sufficient practice, archers can learn to perform two or more concurrent actions equally well. For example, a compound shooter will divide attention of holding the sighted dot aligned to the target, while also being aware of the constant pulling of the release hand till a surprise release happens. You must have experienced it, compound arts especially. In summary, attention involves at least three different dimensions: the deliberate investment of mental effort, selective perception, and a form of mental time sharing on which people can perform two or more skills equally well. The remainder part of this lecture will be devoted mainly to the first of these dimensions of attention, namely the process of concentration. What a lovely place to give a lecture. Now, let's look at concentration as a mental spotlight, the practical value of a good metaphor or an example. A famous psychologist named Kurt Lewin once remarked that there is nothing so practical as a good theory. Nothing like a good theory. This intriguing idea is relevant when considering the importance of the spotlight metaphor of concentration in sports psychology. Before this metaphor is introduced, however, some background information is necessary. Briefly, scientists have always tried to explain the unknown in terms of the known. For example, prior to the advent of information processing psychology, the memory system was often compared to a container. The metaphor was challenged, however, by research findings showing that the more one knows, the more one can remember. And since the mind expands to accommodate new information, the container metaphor of memory fell into disrepute. So what metaphors best capture the essence of concentration? A useful way to understand this important cognitive process is to imagine it as a mental spotlight that one shines at things that attract one's interest. This spotlight is like the head-mounted torches that miners or divers wear in dark environments. Whenever they direct the gaze, their target is illuminated and reaches conscious awareness. When people's absorption in a target reaches a point where there is no difference between what people are thinking about and what they are doing, then they are said to be truly focused. Interestingly, this type of peak experience can occur only if the performer concentrates on actions that are specifically relevant to the task at hand, and above all, under his or her own control. This point will be reiterated later in this long lecture. The spotlight metaphor of attention has several advantages for archers and coaches. Firstly, it highlights the fact that despite what people say in everyday situations, concentration is never really lost, but merely directed at the wrong target, something that is irrelevant to the task at hand. Example, the behavior or sounds from the crowd, or that is distracting for archers, because it makes them think too far ahead. Example, when wondering, what about the possible landing of an arrow long before it is shot? Secondly, the spotlight metaphor is helpful in persuading archers that no matter what happens, they always have considerable control over what they pay attention to in any situation. Specifically, they can change the direction or the width of their mental beam to explain at any given moment. They can direct the spotlight outward at people or objects in their environment, thereby showing an external focus of attention. This happens, for example, when an archer listens carefully for the sound of a boom boom buzzer at the start of a shooting end. Alternatively, archers can choose an internal focus of attention by deliberately concentrating on their own thoughts, feelings, or bodily processes. For example, many elite archers make a deliberate effort to listen to the breathing or to focus on the rhythm of the shot sequence in an effort to counteract feelings of tension that affect archers in high-pressure shoot-offs. Interestingly, emerging evidence in sports psychology suggests that the accuracy of an archer's skill depends significantly on what the archer focuses on while executing it. More precisely, it seems that an external focus of attention, there is one in which the archers concentrate on the effects of their movements on the environment, is usually superior to an internal focus of attention, where performers focus on their own body or on the mechanics of the action when learning or performing archery skills. Apparently, this principle holds true across a variety of skills and levels of archery expertise. Another feature of an archer's mental spotlight is that it has an adjustable beam. Expanding this beam allows the archers to absorb lots of information rapidly, whereas narrowing it enables them to concentrate on just one thought. This one thought principle is one of the factors governing an effective focus in archery and is addressed later in this lecture. To summarize, the spotlight metaphor of attention suggests that athletes' minds are always focused on a target, whether external or internal. More precisely, depending on the direction and width of a person's mental spotlight. His or her concentration at any given moment falls into any one of four categories. One, or A, broad external. B, broad internal. C, narrow external. Or D, narrow internal. Of course, whether or not an athlete's focus is appropriate for the skill that he or she is performing is a very different question. What a beautiful place to give this lecture at. For example, research shows that thinking technically about one's skills while executing them, analysis of the expansion will trigger the clicker in time or not, is unhelpful because it can induce a form of paralysis by analysis. Paralysis by analysis, in which normally automatic processes become labored and complex. You don't leave it, you just are paralyzed. Otherwise, shining one's spotlight on oneself is not a good idea, as it makes one self-conscious and can lead to performance difficulties. And this finding raises an important question. Why do archers seem to lose their concentration so easily? Now, let's look into why archers lose the concentration. It has long been known that skilled archers allow their minds to wander and find it difficult to stay in the present moment in competitive situations. What psychological factors underlie this cognitive weakness? Weaknesses. What? Research shows that people's concentration system is inherently fragile as a result of a combination of evolutionary and psychological factors. From an evolutionary perspective, our ancestors' survival depended on their ability to concentrate for a period of time that was sufficiently long to enable them to learn new skills. However, the capacity to monitor danger in the environment while concentrating on skill learning was also adaptive. How else could people survive the threat of being attacked by predators while hunting with a bow and arrow? Clearly, a certain degree of distractibility was probably hardwired into our ancestors' brain to prevent them from being completely absorbed in every task that they had performed. A second reason for people's limited concentration span stems from the design of working memory. The mental blackboard, which I mentioned earlier, that provides a temporary and accessible workspace for us in our daily lives. This memory system regulates conscious attention by holding a small amount of information in mind for a matter of seconds. To illustrate the fragility of this system, have you ever found yourself walking into a room in your house to look for something, but forgetting what it was as soon as you walked through the door? If people forget their intention so readily, what hope do they have of remaining focused for an entire archery event in the face of pressure and distractions? A practical strategy for dealing with this problem will be considered later in this long lecture when outlining the use of trigger words as concentration techniques. In summary, archers allow their minds to drift partially because of hardwired design features of the mind and partly because they allow distractions to become the target of their mental spotlight. So, what kinds of distractions are encountered in elite competitive archery? Now, let's look at understanding distractions in archery. It's a very important subject for archers and coaches alike, and very pertinent to the sport of archery and winning an Olympic medal. Although distractions take various forms, they can be divided into two main categories, depending on their origin, external and internal. By way of clarification, external distractions are objective environmental events and situations that divert archers' attention away from its intended target. In contrast, internal distractions are largely subjective factors and include archers' own thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations that may hamper their efforts to concentrate on the job at hand. Typical external distractions include factors such as crowd noise or spectator movements, sudden changes in background noise levels, excellent or terrible performance by opponents, their own opponents, and unpredictable windy or weather conditions or circumstances. Another classic external distraction is caused by outstanding or pathetic performance from opponents, as I just told you. As mentioned earlier, internal distractions include any thoughts, emotions, example, anger, or bodily sensations like a muscle pain, injury, fatigue that prevent people from concentrating fully on shooting. One of the most common of these distractions comes from either thinking about an earlier bad shot or from thinking too far ahead, wondering about what will happen to the total score rather than focusing what one has to do right now. Other such distractions include thinking about the result of a match long before it is over, worrying about what other people, example a coach, father, mother, or a sponsor might say or do during an archery contest, and feeling tired or upset emotionally. Sometimes these distractions combine in subtle ways or disrupt athletes' concentration. Having explained the theoretical distinction between external and internal distractions in archery, it may be helpful to explore archers' views about concentrations and distractions. Now let's do some exercises to explore distractions in archery. The main purpose of this exercise is to find out what the term concentration means to archers. In addition, it will help to identify various distractions that archers experience in archery and will explore how these distractions affect their performance. Here are some questions to ask to elite archers. 1. What does the term concentration mean to you? 2. On a scale of 0, meaning not at all important, to 5, meaning extremely important, how important do you think that the skill of concentration is for successful performance in archery? Question number 3. If you think that concentration is important, do you allocate any time each week in training to develop this skill? If not, why are you not spending the time? 4. What distractions tend to upset your concentration before a performance? Describe the situation and the distractions that result from it. Question number 5. What distractions bother you during the event itself? Again, describe the situation and the distraction that results from it. 6. Thinking of a recent competition. Give me a specific example of how a distraction changed your focus and or affected your performance. Tell me what the distraction was and how it occurred and how you reacted to it. Question number 7. Do you use any specific techniques for dealing with such distractions? Please explain and give me an example. Now, what are the learning points of this exercise? What are the learning points of this exercise? This exercise will help you to understand what concentration means to archers and to explore the practical strategies that archers use to deal with the distractions that they experience. It will also indicate whether or not archers devote any time per week to actually improve their focusing skills. In reply to the question that have been asked to many archers usually indicate that concentration is very important for success in archery, but that they rarely devote any training time to improving the skill in any given week. That's what they say. In addition to this practical neglect of concentration skills and training it is so disappointing to discover that very little research has been conducted on archers' experience of distractions. This neglect of phenomenology of distractibility is largely due to 2 factors, one theoretical and the other methodological. The theoretical factor is that for many years, cognitive researchers falsely assumed that information flows into the mind only in one direction, inward from the outside world. In accepting this assumption, researchers have ignored the possibility that information could travel in opposite directions. That is, from long-term memory into working memory. A second reason for the neglect of internal distractions in psychology has its roots in a methodological bias. To explain, researchers focused on external distractions simply because they were easy to measure than self-generated distractions from inside. As a result of this bias, few studies have been conducted on the theoretical mechanisms by which internal distractions disrupt concentration processes in archers. Now, let's look into the principles of effective concentration. The principles of effective concentration, based on the relevant research literature that is available. At least 5 theoretical principles of effective concentration in archery may be identified. 3 of them describe the establishment of an optimal focus, whereas the other 2 indicate how it may be disturbed. 1. Archers have to decide to concentrate. It will not happen by chance. 2. Archers can concentrate only on one thought at a time. 3. Archers' minds are focused when there is no difference between what they are doing and what they are thinking. 4. Archers lose their concentration when they focus on factors that are outside their control. Archers should focus outwards when they get nervous. They should focus outside. The first principle in concentration. Archers have to decide to concentrate. It does not happen by chance. அப்படியே நடக்காது. The first principle of effective concentration is the idea that one has to make a deliberate decision to invest mental effort in some aspect of one's archery performance. In short, athletes have to prepare to concentrate rather than hope it will happen by chance. One way in which elite archers can implement this principle is to establish an imaginary switch-on zone before their performance. For example, as some archers step into the waiting line in the field before a match, they mentally engage the concentration system as if flicking on a switch. On and off, they switch it on. The idea of learning to turn one's concentration on and off takes a lot of practice, however. Turning it off, turning it on. The second principle of effective concentration. Archers can concentrate only one thought at a time. The second principle of effective concentration is the one thought notion. The idea that archers, just like everyone else, can focus consciously only on one thing at a time. Although people can learn to do several things at the same time, the fragility of their working memory, as I explained earlier, means that they can think of only one thing at any given moment. In archery, archers often develop such a form of single-mindedness as a response to a specific turning point or influential incident in their careers, in their lifetimes. The third principle of effective concentration. Archers' minds are focused when there is no difference between what they are doing and what they are thinking. The third principle of effective concentration is the idea that one's mind is truly focused when one is so absorbed in the task at hand that there is no difference between one's action and thoughts. The fusion of the body and mind is especially characteristic of peak performance experiences. Research suggests that the best way to increase one's chances of achieving this state of mind is to concentrate on actions that are specific, relevant, and above all, under one's own control. Examples of these are watching at a fixed point before picking the arrow, focusing on the click sound of the knocking of an arrow into the string, one deep breath before raising the bow, thinking of a graceful smooth draw while pulling the string, focusing on the load division on the three fingers on the string, focusing on the three fingers, being conscious of the speed of the release, the speed of the release, the speed of the release. Now let's check the fourth principle of effective concentration. Archers lose their concentration when they focus on factors that are outside their control. The fourth principle suggests that archers are most likely to lose their focus whenever they concentrate on factors that are outside their control, irrelevant to the process at hand or that have not yet happened. When I asked the top recurve archer in India why he performed so badly in the Olympics, he answered by saying that he was thinking what to do with the money he would get after winning the Olympic medal. It became his fatal distraction, thinking about something before it happens. Now let's look at the fifth principle of effective concentration. Archers should focus outward when they get nervous. The final building block of effective concentration is a proposition that when archers get nervous, they should focus outward on actions and not inward on doubts. This switch to an external focus is necessary because anxiety tends to make people self-critical and hyper-vigilant. That is, excessively sensitive to any sign of what they dread, they are afraid of, like an uncontrollable miss. Interestingly, recent research suggests that archers' focus of attention affects the quality and the accuracy of their skills. More precisely, there is growing evidence that archers who focus outward, concentrating on the effects of the action, tend to perform better than counterparts who display an internal focus of attention. That is, who concentrate on themselves or on the mechanics of their skills. This advice makes sense because when archers concentrate on the mechanics of the skills, they are likely to experience a sudden deterioration in performance known as paralysis by analysis. They get paralyzed by analyzing too much. Having identified some key principles of effective concentration, it is now important to consider how these ideas can be implemented by archers in practical terms. What must the archers do to train the minds at effect? Hey, you have been talking too much, Mr. Who, Dr. Who. What to do? Now let's look at some practical concentration techniques and tips on thought management. Lots of techniques are available to help archers to focus properly. The ones that I'm going to describe are very effective, mainly because they are based on the principle that optimal performance emerges when there is no gap between what archers are doing and what they are thinking. Technique number one, I'm going to explain to you the techniques that you should use. Setting performance goals. Focusing on actions, not results. Sports psychologists distinguish between outcome goal, that is the scores of a set, and performance goals, that is actions that serve. What do you need to do as stepping stones to better your scores? Armed with this distinction, many archers set performance goals in an effort to improve their concentration. It's very windy here. For example, a recurve archer must think of releasing only after a hold of 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds without loss of load in the anchor. Or a compound shooter can focus on bettering the speed of his or her sudden release. The rationale underlying the strategy is that by focusing on actions that are under one's own control, one is less likely to be distracted if one allows oneself to think too far ahead. Now, technique number 2 that I'm going to teach you is using routines, using pre-performance routines. A second concentration technique involves the use of my favorite pre-performance routines or consistent sequences of thoughts and actions that archers display before executing key skills. Psychologically, routines are valuable because they take archers seamlessly from thinking about something to actually doing it. They improve concentration because they help elite archers to focus on the job that they have to do, one step at a time. For example, top recurve archers mimic the act of a smooth release with their hands a few times before going for a shoot-off. You must have seen it on television or in YouTube. Also, by concentrating on each step of one's routine, archers ensure that they stay in the present moment. Routines or rituals are extensively used by top archers. For example, I have seen a top Indian Olympic recurve woman archer have a small teddy bear hung on her quiver, and she squeezes it before she starts any end of shooting. She squeezes the teddy bear. Technique number 3, using trigger words. A third focusing technique involves the use of trigger words or short, vivid, and positively phrased verbal reminders designed to help archers to focus on a specific target or to perform a relevant action. To illustrate, I have a compound archer who used to raise the bow slightly, before releasing, she used to use the bow. She used to use a trigger word, stay still. Every time, stay still, she released. For another archer who had a huge problem with the sighted dot in the scope wiggling, he used to use the word, trigger word, stay stuck, stay stuck. This archer later went on to win a silver medal in the compound junior national, defeating some top archers. So these trigger words are very, very important. Stay stuck, don't raise the bow. Technique number 4, imagining what one wants to do next. A fourth concentration strategy in sport involves the use of mental imagery or seeing and feeling oneself perform a given skill in one's mind eye before actually doing it. Imagery helps archers to prepare for various imaginary scenarios, like a clicker timing gone wrong or a shoot-off, thereby ensuring that they will not be distracted by any unexpected events. It is also valuable in helping archers to distinguish between on and off zones in competitive sports situations. What a lovely place to give a lecture. Imagery is used widely in archery as a concentration technique. For example, Shanghai Jin is on record that she used to imagine several times every day, over and over again, standing in the Olympic podium and receiving the Olympic medal. As a ritual, she used to spend a full 5 minutes as soon as she woke up, imagining the medal on her neck. The medal on her neck, every day she used to imagine. That's what you need to do. Imagine standing in the podium and winning the medal. Technique number 5, physically relaxing and centering on one's body. Physical relaxation techniques can help archers to concentrate effectively. In particular, lowering one's shoulder, doing gentle neck rolling exercises, flapping out the tension from one's arms and legs, and taking slow, deep breaths can lower one's center of gravity. A process called centering, and reduce the likelihood of errors, any errors. Interestingly, one of the biggest mistakes made by elite archers is to hold their breath 100% while they prepare for a shot. When this happens, the chest muscles tense up and the release becomes jerky and inconsistent. By contrast, exhaling 50% while drawing the bow is widely used as a focusing technique by many elite Korean archers. Specifically, many top archers synchronize the pattern of their inhalations and exhalations with covert repetition of the word relax, relax, relax in an effort to improve their concentration skills. Now let's come to technique number 6, simulation training. Trying up dress rehearsal. Simulation training is based on the assumption that archers will learn to concentrate more effectively in real life pressure situations if they can recreate these situations in practice and train under them. For example, archer Darrell Pace, the famous archer, used to practice shooting arrows near railroad tracks and highways in an effort to simulate the distracting conditions that he experienced in competitive situations. It's a very long lecture. Unfortunately, as with any simulation, there are always fidelity issues or doubts about the extent to which dress rehearsals can ever fully replicate the actual experience of true competitive action in the Olympics or the World Cup. Having examined some popular concentration strategies used by archers, the next topic I would like to address is thought management in archery. Thought management in archery. While this needs a series of several lectures, already this is a long lecture, let me give you some tips on thought management in archery. A key theme of this effort is the idea that effective concentration requires thinking only about what one can control. But what exactly can archers control in matches and tournaments? 3 factors stand out immediately. How they prepare for a competition, how they perform in it, and above all, how they react to mistakes and adversity during the competition itself. It is usually in relation to the last point that athletes' thinking goes awry. For example, if archers are expected to shoot flawlessly all the time, the perfectionist standards will prevent them from fulfilling their potential. Why? To answer briefly, it is because competitive archery always represents a compromise between what is desirable, it's too windy, example, shooting without errors, and what is possible in the real circumstances. Example, minimizing the impact of an error by letting go of it so that it does not affect the next decision one makes. In this regard, let's see some practical tips on managing one's thought in the face of setbacks. Let's check the distraction first and the possible simulation techniques. First the distraction, then the simulation techniques. The first distraction, let's imagine crowd noise, a lot of crowd noise. What is a simulation technique? By playing specially recorded, CDs of crowd noise during training sessions in order to familiarize archers with expected distractions during matches in different venues. The next distraction, gamesmanship, simulation technique. What is the simulation technique? Arranging for fellow archers to simulate opponents' possible gamesmanship. What is it? What is game? Insinuating stares, looking at them, staring during training sessions or practice sessions. Next distraction, fatigue. People getting tired, they can't shoot. What is the simulation technique? Alternating normal training sessions with short bouts of high-intensity exercise in order to induce the type of fatigue they may be expected in competitive matches. Become tired, do some exercise, and then start shooting. Now the next distraction is heat and humidity. What is a simulation technique? You can arrange for archers to train and play while wearing layers and layers of extra dress, extra clothing, several shirts or pants in order to simulate hot weather conditions. What is the next distraction that psychologists say? Unfavorable judge decisions. You have scored a 9, but they have said you scored 8. Simulation technique, designing modified setup game situations containing deliberately unfair judging decisions so that you can train the mind. Now, another distraction. One archer missing in team match. In team, you have to have about 4, one archer is missing, or 3, one for possible simulation technique should be creating pressure situations in training where one archer in a team match is missing, or the coach suffers ill health, he collapses and something happens to him, or arrives late to simulate such a situation. Now, let's have some practical tips on thought management. Archers need to be aware that although striving for perfection is a good thing, judging themselves harshly because they did not produce a perfect performance is damaging psychologically because it can erode one's confidence and self-esteem. Next, archers must learn to avoid the habit of taking failure personally. All archers make mistakes, but not all archers blame themselves as a result. Next tip, archers need to get their disappointments in perspective. In a year's time, they probably will not even remember why they were so upset about a silly mistake that they made now. Next tip for you in thought management. Archers have to avoid thinking about what might have been, wishful or counterfactual. Thinking cannot change anything, boss, and it is a waste of time, mere tote. Top archers rarely focus on the mistakes they have made. Instead, they concentrate on what they plan to do differently the next time. The next tip for you, archers can learn a great deal from the way in which successful people handle setbacks. In general, successful people try hard not to make the same mistake twice. Next tip, archers should ask themselves what aspects of the setback they can change in the future. Successful people see setbacks as caused by things that they can change. You can always change. Next, archers should develop the habit of identifying at least one good thing. Example, a lesson learned, such as a change in perspective that came out of the mistake that they made, or setback they experienced. Always learn from mistakes. Always there is a gain in making any mistake. The purpose of the cognitive mistake management techniques discussed earlier is to help prevent archers from engaging in what psychologists call snowball thinking. What is it? Snowball thinking, whereby an error in performance triggers a chain of irrelevant negative thoughts. Example, typical, another stupid mistake, I'm playing very poorly. That not only distracts the archer involved, but also encourages him or her to make pessimistic predictions about the chances of winning the future matches or any match. Example, I'm making so many bad shots today that I'm bound to lose. Negative thoughts. This type of loose, unfocused thinking is the direct opposite of the one thought concentration principle I explained earlier. To conclude this lecture in this beautiful place, the relationship between concentration and thought management can be summarized as follows. If archers can be trained to narrow their mental spotlight so that they think only about moves that are under specific, relevant, and under their control, like this is moving, I'm holding it, they have created the right frame of mind to perform the best of their ability. See, it was moving and I tried and held it. I'm reacting and adapting. Of course, this is a very difficult challenge for any performer. But with appropriate training and practice, archers can learn to improve their concentration and thinking skills. After all, as modern cognitive psychology has shown, there is no such thing as a truly difficult task. Only an practiced one. Well, so much for this session on attention, concentration, and thought management. More to come on the mind, about the mind. The Olympic gold in archery, nothing but the Olympic gold. Get motivated and motivate the archery world around you. The job starts today. Your job starts right now. Coaches, archers, till I provoke your mind again, it's a good luck from me. Jai Hind, Jai Hind, Jai Hind. Om, Om, Om. Olympic medal, nothing but the Olympic medal. Bye-bye. This is Who from this beautiful place called Destiny.